The room was heavy with silence, the kind that presses down on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. The beeping of the hospital machine was the only sound, slow and uneven, echoing like the ticking of a clock running out of time. On the frail hospital bed lay an old man whose life had been spent building dreams for others. His family, his daughter, and the man he once trusted as a son. His breaths were shallow, his hands trembling as they rested weakly on the blanket. At his bedside stood his daughter, her eyes swollen with tears, gripping his fingers like she could somehow hold back the inevitable. Beside her stood her husband, a tall, proud man, with the cold arrogance of wealth in his eyes. In that dimly lit room where life was slipping away, a scene unfolded that no one present would ever forget. With deliberate cruelty, the millionaire tore the divorce papers in front of the dying father, shreds falling like broken promises onto the white hospital floor. And in that moment, when despair threatened to drown the room, the old man gathered his final strength, his last words breaking the air like lightning. Words that would change everything forever. And dear listeners, before I take you deeper into this unforgettable journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and redemption, I want to pause for a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, then please like video, share it with others, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your support helps keep these stories alive, stories that remind us of the fragile but beautiful connections we hold onto in life. The story begins years earlier, in a time when hope still colored every sunrise for a young woman named Clara. She was raised in a modest home, her father, Samuel, dedicating his entire life to raising her after her mother's passing. Samuel wasn't wealthy, but he was rich in values, teaching Clara that dignity and compassion could carry a person further than gold ever could. Clara's world was simple but warm, filled with laughter around the kitchen table and evenings spent listening to her father's old stories. But like many young hearts, Clara was drawn to the kind of love that seemed larger than life, the kind that promised her escape from struggles and a future of security. That love came in the form of Alexander, a man whose charm was matched only by his fortune. Alexander was a self-made millionaire, or so he liked to claim, though many whispered that his fortune had been built through ruthless deals and broken alliances. To Clara, however, he seemed like a beacon of strength and ambition. Against her father's subtle warnings, she married Alexander, believing she was stepping into a fairy tale. But reality was a storm that hit soon after the vows were spoken. Alexander's love, once tender, began to wither into coldness. He saw Clara less as a partner and more as a trophy, a reflection of his own success. The mansion she lived in became her prison, its luxury mocking the loneliness that grew inside her heart. Through all of this, her father Samuel remained her anchor. He visited her often, reminding her that she was stronger than the shadows cast over her life. He saw through Alexander's arrogance, and though he tried not to interfere, the worry etched deeper into his face with each passing year. Clara, torn between love and pride, never admitted how broken she felt inside. She prayed silently that one day Alexander would change, that he would see her not as an extension of his empire, but as the woman who had given him her heart. But change never came. Instead came betrayal. Clara discovered that Alexander had been unfaithful, his name whispered alongside women who sought his wealth as much as he sought their attention. Confronting him only ended with cruel words, words that stripped away her dignity. It was then that she decided to take the boldest step of her life. She filed for divorce. For Clara, it was not just about ending a marriage, but about reclaiming her soul. When Samuel heard the news, his heart swelled with pride. His daughter was finally choosing herself over a man who had never truly cherished her. But fate has a way of complicating even the bravest decisions. Samuel fell gravely ill around the same time. The man who had once carried her on his shoulders was now confined to a hospital bed, his body weakened but his spirit unbroken. Clara rushed to his side, finding comfort in his presence even as she faced the storm Alexander had become. For Alexander saw the divorce not as a separation, but as an insult to his pride. His empire was built on control, and Clara daring to walk away threatened the very foundation of who he believed himself to be. The confrontation came in that sterile hospital room. Clara stood by her father's side, divorce papers in her trembling hands, believing that finally, Alexander would be forced to face the truth of her decision. But instead, he smiled that cold, cruel smile, took the papers, and with deliberate defiance, tore them into pieces before her eyes. The sound of ripping paper echoed louder than any machine in the room, each shred falling like a verdict against her freedom. Clara's knees buckled as tears burned her cheeks, but she didn't look away. She couldn't, not when her father was there to witness it. And it was then, as if gathering the last reserves of life, that Samuel spoke. His voice was weak but carried a weight no one could ignore. He told Alexander that true wealth was not measured in gold, nor in empires, but in the love and respect a man left behind when his days were done. He told him that the power he clung to so desperately would one day crumble, but the kindness he failed to give would haunt him forever. Then, turning his eyes to his daughter, Samuel whispered words that pierced through her despair. "Clara, never forget, you were born with a strength greater than this. You carry my love, and that will never be broken." Those were the last words Samuel ever spoke. His hand grew still, the machine beside him flatlined, and silence fell over the room. Clara broke, her cries shattering the night, while Alexander stood frozen, his arrogance cracked for the first time. For the old man's words were not merely farewell. They were prophecy, a mirror held up to the emptiness within Alexander's soul. What happened in the days that followed was nothing short of transformation. Clara, fueled by her father's final blessing, refused to bow anymore. She pursued the divorce with renewed determination, and this time, no torn paper could stop her. Alexander, haunted by Samuel's last words, began to see cracks in his empire. Business partners withdrew, deals collapsed, and the fortune he once lorded over others began to slip from his grasp. The irony was merciless. Everything Samuel had warned of came to pass. Clara, meanwhile, found strength she never knew she had. With her father's memory as her compass, she rebuilt her life piece by piece, not with riches, but with dignity. She began working with charities, helping women who had suffered as she once did, turning her pain into purpose. And in doing so, she found joy again. Not the fleeting kind Alexander had chased, but the enduring kind that comes from living with truth and compassion. And now, dear listeners, I want to pause again. If this story has touched your heart, if Clara's courage and Samuel's wisdom have stirred something within you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Every click of support helps us bring more tales that inspire, heal, and remind us of the strength within us all. In the end, Alexander's empire crumbled, leaving him with nothing but regret. Clara, however, thrived, not because she had money or power, but because she chose love, truth, and resilience. Her father's last words echoed in her life forever, guiding her, protecting her, reminding her that strength is not in wealth, but in the courage to rise when life tries to break you. Special request: comment below what part of this story touched you the most. I would love to hear your thoughts and feelings.